All right, let's open this one up. Today we're looking at what is essentially a case file, a really personal story about a childhood betrayal. And what's wild is how this one single event, this one moment, can send out these echoes that haunt a person for years, showing up in the most unexpected, strangest ways. And this line right here, from a doctor's notes, well, it basically tells you the whole story before we even begin. It's the end result. Stark, brutal, a total loss of faith in other people, all born from a single moment when trust was just completely shattered.
So how did this story even come to light? Well, it all starts with a mother, Nina, who's really worried about her son Abdul. She's sitting in a doctor's office because she's been noticing something really strange happening behind her son's closed bedroom door. Now, we're not just talking about a kid muttering to himself while he plays. No, Nina's hearing full-blown conversations, arguments even. It sounds like two totally separate people are in there, debating back and forth. You can imagine as a mom how chilling that would be to hear. It's a total mystery. So of course she has to ask. You can just feel her anxiety, right? She probably approaches him really gently, trying to understand, "Sweetheart, who are you talking to in there?"
And this is where it gets even stranger. Abdul just completely denies it. Flat out. In his mind, those conversations, they never happened. And that tells you something really important. The conflict isn't just in the room. It's inside his own head. A battle he may not even know he's fighting. To really get to the bottom of where these two voices are coming from, we have to rewind. We've got to go back in time to this incredible moment of discovery in a simple backyard garden. This is where it all began. So picture this. You're a little kid just messing around in the dirt with your toy cars. And then your hand just hits something. Not a rock. Something else. Something solid and metal. You dig it out, and there it is. A silver ring with this big, fat, chunky diamond. I mean, come on. That's straight out of a storybook. But here's where things get kind of sad really fast. His first instinct isn't excitement. It's fear. He immediately starts running down this list in his head of all the people he can't trust with this amazing secret. And it's his own family. His sister would just lord it over him. His dad, he'd probably trade it for booze money. And his mom, bless her heart, she'd put it somewhere safe and lose it. So right from the jump, his world is already a place where he has to hide any glimmer of hope. So what does he do? He gets clever. He doesn't ask his dad for help, he asks for information. And he gets this little piece of childhood wisdom, this almost magical test to figure out if his newfound treasure, his future really, is actually the real deal. And boom, this is the moment. That raw, unfiltered explosion of childhood fantasy crashing into reality. You can just feel that jolt, that electric shock of him dragging it across the window and seeing the scratch. It's real. The dream is actually unbelievably real. And this part is so important. For this boy, the ring was never really about the money. It was a physical thing he could hold that represented escape. It was a tangible future, a promise of a life that wasn't the struggle he saw every day. It wasn't just a thing. It was everything. But you know how these stories go. Every time there's a found treasure, there's always a dragon guarding it. Only in this story, the dragon showed up disguised as a friend. Oh man, this detail is just heartbreaking, isn't it? The hiding spot is so pure, so perfectly a kid thing to do. He trusts his biggest, most precious secret to his favorite toy. It just puts a spotlight on how innocent he is, which makes the violation that's coming feel so much worse. So he has a friend over, and that friend brings his older cousin. And the cousin tricks them into going outside, and then just ransacks the house. And look at what he took. It wasn't just the ring. It was collectibles, cash, something from his parents' room, even his sister's favorite Boys to Men tape. See, he didn't just steal an object. He stole the whole family's sense of safety. He violated their home. What comes next is this slow, painful lesson in what it means to be powerless. That bright, shining hope from finding the ring, it's gone, snuffed out. And this cold, hard reality starts to set in. He does everything a kid can think of. He calls their house, he walks over there, he knocks on the door, just trying, begging to get his future back. But he's met with nothing, a brick wall of silence. The door gets shut in his face. He's just a kid, completely alone in this fight. And then this happens. It's just the ultimate twist of the knife. Months later, the thief's little brother finds him on the school playground. and he's holding these little badges that were also stolen from Abdul's room, and he tries to sell them back to him, 50 cents each. It's not just theft anymore. It's a complete and total mockery of his pain. He tries one last time. He goes to an adult, an authority figure, the principal. He tells his story, hoping for some kind of justice. And nothing. Nothing happens. The system completely fails him. And that's it. The loss is final, the ring is gone forever, and the lesson is learned loud and clear. Trust is a joke, and nobody is coming to save you. And that brings us right back to where we started. Back to the doctor's office with a worried mom and a little boy who's having arguments with someone who isn't there. Now, finally, we can connect the dots. You can see the path so clearly now, can't you? Step 1, a real, tangible hope is found. Step 2, that hope is stolen by someone he trusted. Step 3, when he looks for help, every door is slammed in his face, leaving him totally powerless and alone. And step 4, well, that massive unresolved conflict, that burning sense of injustice, it had to go somewhere. So it went inward. The two voices his mom hears, that's the echo of the betrayal. It's this endless internal argument that's been raging ever since. So in the end, this whole story leaves us with this one really haunting question. When you steal a child's one shining symbol of a better life, what rushes in to fill that vacuum? What takes its place? In this case, it was a fractured self, a ghost in the room, a conversation with nobody that would echo on for years.
Usually, when we talk about like a medical diagnosis, there's this underlying expectation of just absolute precision.
Right. Yeah, it's treated almost like engineering.
Exactly. Like you break your arm, right? And the X-ray produces that stark, high-contrast image of a jagged white line across the bone.
Mm-hmm.
And the physician just points to the screen and says, well, there is the structural failure. It's binary.
Yeah, it's visible.
Right. It is visible. And because you can see it, it's fundamentally comforting in a way. We have this deep-seated psychological need to categorize trauma into these neat little observable boxes.
Well, yeah, because the moment you can cleanly categorize a fracture, I mean, you inherently possess the algorithm to treat it.
Right. You know the steps.
Exactly. A physical break implies a cast, a timeline for cellular regeneration, and then an eventual return to the baseline. It grants the practitioner and you, the patient, this illusion of total control.
Yeah, control over the chaotic elements of human health.
Right, because you're dealing with observable mechanics.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting, the moment you transition away from like orthopedics and you step into the landscape of neurodevelopment,
oh, yeah.
Specifically, you know, the terrain of profound compounding childhood trauma, that whole diagnostic X-ray machine just shatters completely.
It's useless.
Totally useless.
Right.
We are no longer observing a clean calcium fracture on a glowing monitor. We're looking at a diagnostic environment that is, it's murky, it's layered, and it's deeply unsettling.
Because you're attempting to map the invisible psychological scaffolding of a human mind.
Yes, exactly.
They're trying to figure out not just where a mind fractured, but the structural integrity of the environment that forced it to break in the first place.
Which is so much harder to see.
Oh, absolutely. When you examine psychological trauma in a developing brain, you aren't looking at a single point of impact.
Right.
You're looking at a localized structural collapse that comes from chronic systemic pressure.
Yeah.
And honestly, that is exactly what makes the source material we are examining today so uniquely captivating and, well, frankly, just devastating.
It really is. So for you listening, we are opening a very specific, deeply mysterious case file today for this deep dive.
Yeah.
And it was compiled by a practitioner referred to in the documents as Dr. Tennillious.
Yeah.
And the file itself bears this incredibly ominous title.
It's a wild title for a medical file.
It really is. It's called A Visitation at Dr. Tennillious' Office.
Yeah.
Right away, that title creates this profound diagnostic tension. Like, we are sitting in a psychiatric or medical setting, yet the terminology...
A visitation.
Right, a visitation borrows directly from the lexicon of the supernatural.
It does.
It sounds less like a clinical evaluation of a child in distress and way more like, I don't know, the inciting incident of a Gothic haunting.
And that tension, that specific tension between the clinical and the supernatural is basically the central axis of this entire file.
Yeah.
To understand the reality of this case, we have to meticulously merge two almost entirely contradictory documents that have been bound together in this single folder.
Right, it's a two-part file.
Exactly. First, we have Dr. Tennillious' clinical summary. And this is a very sterile, distance documentation of a mother's just sheer terror over her child's bizarre, seemingly unexplainable behavior.
And then, bound right next to that clinical detachment is this raw firsthand memoir written by the victim himself.
Yeah.
And the file credits the memoir to Ryan Dillon Brassington, with editing by Leela Brassington. Though Dr. Tennillious' clinical notes refer to the child patient as Abdul.
Right, there's a discrepancy there.
Yeah. And whether that discrepancy is a deliberate use of pseudonyms to preserve patient confidentiality, or maybe evidence that we're looking at a composite file of overlapping case studies, the core narrative remains just inextricably intertwined.
We're forced to marry the cold, observational gaze of the doctor with the visceral, chaotic, and frankly, hyperspecific memory of a child who survived a catastrophic psychological breach.
Which is such a tough balance. And we really must address that central diagnostic tension you mentioned earlier.
The visitation itself.
Right, the visitation. Because the symptoms described by the mother, Nina, in this clinical file are jarring.
Oh, absolutely terrifying for a parent.
Yeah. I mean, if you were walking past your child's closed bedroom door and heard what she heard, your mind might effortlessly bypass all logic and jump straight to the paranormal.
Because she is reporting voices in empty rooms.
Right.
Heated, multi-layered debates occurring when the child is completely alone.
If you read the transcript of her complaint, it sounds exactly like possession.
It really does.
It sounds like an external supernatural threat has infiltrated the architecture of her home. And that's our core mission for you today on this deep dive.
Figuring out what's real.
Exactly. When you read through this extraordinary narrative, you are challenged to figure out exactly where the line is drawn.
And where it blurs.
Right, where it violently blurs between an internal psychological splintering designed to keep a child alive and what a terrified parent perceives as a literal ghost story.
Because to comprehend the haunting at the end of this timeline, we have to forensically reconstruct the architecture of the mind that is being haunted.
Right.
This narrative isn't simply about a stolen object, which is, the physical inciting incident we're going to dissect.
Yeah.
It is a microscopic, agonizing exploration of the anatomy of childhood trust.
Wow.
We are going to observe the crushing neurological weight of poverty, the acute situational awareness of a traumatized child, and the impenetrable fortresses the human mind is capable of building.
The adults fail.
Yes, exactly. When the surrounding community fundamentally fails its most basic protective duties.
Because before we can even touch the trauma of the doctor's office, we have to establish the baseline environment.
We have to understand the genesis of the hope that was ultimately eradicated.
Right. So we are leaving the sterile walls of Dr. Tennillious' clinic, and we're transitioning back in time directly into the sensory reality of Ryan's firsthand narrative.
Okay.
We are going into the dirt of a childhood garden.
The environment where the anomaly is actually discovered.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to look at the prose in the memoir here, because the hyper-specific sensory recall is just staggering.
It's so vivid.
It is. He's a child, right?
Right.
Playing outside with his Hot Wheels cars. He's physically altering his environment, digging into the earth to construct ramps and jumps for these little metal cars.
That kids do.
Exactly. And he specifically describes the texture of the earth as hard black mud.
Yeah.
And when you read that phrase, I mean, it evokes a very specific tactile memory. It is gritty, it is resistant, it requires physical labor for a child to manipulate.
Right, it's not soft sand.
No. And mid-dig, his fingers hit something completely anomalous to that biological environment.
It pulls it out.
He pulls it out, wipes away this hard black mud, and unearths a manufactured heavy silver object.
And the visual and tactile contrast he establishes in the text there is so critical to understanding the psychological impact of the moment.
How so?
Well, you have the mundane, earthy, resistant reality of the mud,
Right.
which basically represents his everyday existence, starkly contrasted against the sudden, shocking emergence of polished, refined metal.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And it isn't just a discarded piece of industrial scrap either.
No.
As he clears the dirt away, the shape resolves, and he realizes with mounting shock that he is holding a ring.
Yeah.
In his exact phonetic spelling from the memoir, he describes it as a solid-sizer ring with a big, fat, chunky diamond.
A big, fat, chunky diamond.
Right. And if we contextualize this within, like, the economy of childhood, it is a reality-breaking event.
Oh, absolutely.
The currency of a child playing in the mud is entirely localized. You know, toy cars, cool rocks, maybe a bottle cap.
Right.
Suddenly, he is holding an asset of immense adult-level macroeconomic value. It's like finding a legendary loot drop in a video game right in the tutorial area.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. It completely disrupts the expected progression of his material reality.
Yeah.
He has bypassed the gradual accumulation of minor childhood assets and stumbled directly into an object that carries the weight of serious capital.
But the truly fascinating and, I guess, deeply tragic element of this discovery is his immediate neurological response.
The paranoia.
Yes, because think about the standard baseline reaction of a child who finds something mildly valuable, like, I don't know, a $5 bill on the sidewalk or a unique fossil.
Sure.
The biological imperative of a secure child is to immediately seek out their primary attachment figures to share the dopamine hit.
Right, they run inside.
They run inside, hold the object aloft, and shout for their parents. They seek shared validation.
I want everyone to see it.
Exactly. But Ryan's reaction, it bypasses joy almost entirely and instantly triggers a highly sophisticated paranoid threat assessment protocol. Why is a child's immediate reaction to finding treasure absolute paranoia about their own family stealing it?
Well, that reaction provides us with a profound diagnostic window into his family dynamic.
Yeah.
The internal monologue documented in his memoir reveals a child who does not view his home as a sanctuary.
Right.
He views it as a complex ecosystem of competing predators and unreliable stewards.
Oh, competing predators.
Yeah. Before the joy of the discovery can even fully metabolize in his system, his hypervigilance just takes over.
He literally categorizes his immediate family members by the specific mechanism of their threat.
Right, he breaks them all down.
He does. He
Yeah.
explicitly states he cannot reveal the ring to his sister because she will stand over him. He cannot show his mother because she will use it as a keepsafe and lose it.
Right.
And most devastatingly, he cannot tell his father because his father will take it and swap it for alcohol money.
Yeah.
I'd argue this level of situational awareness in a child is a symptom of profound environmental failure.
Oh, without a doubt.
He isn't just guessing. He has empirically mapped the exact vectors through which his family will betray him.
Let's dissect that threat matrix a bit because it establishes the chronic allostatic load this child is carrying.
Okay, allostatic load.
Yeah, allostatic load is essentially the cumulative wear and tear on biological systems resulting from chronic stress.
Got it.
So the sister represents an immediate threat of physical domination and territorial bullying. She will assert physical superiority to claim the asset.
Right.
The mother represents a more passive but equally destructive threat of negligence.
Like she'll just lose it.
Exactly. She lacks the executive function or organizational stability to steward something valuable.
She would just absorb the asset into her own chaos.
Precisely. And then the father represents the apex existential threat.
Yeah.
The child implicitly understands the mechanics of addiction. He knows that the father does not view objects for their intrinsic beauty or familial value, but purely for their conversion rate.
Conversion into alcohol.
Exactly. The diamond is immediately recognized as a highly liquid asset that will be consumed to feed the father's chemical dependency.
God, it's so heavy for a kid.
It is. The child knows this instinctively. Therefore, the diamond is not a gift to the family. It is a liability that will trigger the family's worst dysfunctions.
So he is forced to immediately internalize this massive secret.
Yeah.
He has to become the sole custodian of this anomaly. But a child's brain still craves empirical validation.
Of course.
He needs to know if the ring is actually what he thinks it is, or if it's just, a piece of costume jewelry masquerading as an artifact.
Right. He needs proof.
He requires expert consultation.
Yeah.
But he is fundamentally surrounded by hostile actors.
Yeah.
Which forces him to execute a maneuver that is brilliantly manipulative. And this brings us to what we call the glass test.
Right, the glass test. It is a remarkable display of calculated risk assessment and social engineering by a child.
He needs the adult's knowledge, but he cannot expose the asset. So he approaches the apex threat himself.
The father.
The father. And he frames his inquiry as a purely hypothetical scenario. He asks his dad, super casually, could you tell if a diamond was real? And his father actually delivers. He tells the child that if you drag a real diamond across a glass window, it will score the glass because the diamond is harder.
The father is providing accurate, practical knowledge based on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness.
Right.
But if we analyze the subtext of this interaction, it is deeply complex.
How so?
Well, why does a father who is mired in the kind of poverty and addiction that terrifies his own son possess working knowledge of gemological testing?
Huh. That is a phenomenal question.
Right. It suggests a history. Is it the knowledge of a man who used to have wealth and lost it?
Oh,
Or is it the street-level knowledge of someone accustomed to pawning objects and needing to verify stolen goods?
oh, wow. The text doesn't explicitly tell us, but the ambient tragedy of the scene kind of implies the latter, doesn't it?
It does. But regardless of how the father acquired the knowledge, look at the duality of his role in this singular interaction.
Yeah.
For this brief 30-second conversation, the father is fulfilling the ideal parental archetype.
Right. He is a teacher dispensing wisdom to a curious son.
Exactly. Yet the child must extract this wisdom while fiercely guarding his actual reality from the very man providing the lesson.
Wow.
The father is simultaneously the source of enlightenment and the primary agent of destruction.
The cognitive dissonance required for a child to navigate that interaction without giving himself away is just immense.
It's massive.
But he secures the data, successfully detaches from the interaction, retreats to the isolation of his bedroom, and shuts the door.
Yeah.
And then he runs the physical experiment. He tests the diamond against the glass.
And this is where the emotional suppression breaks and the raw euphoria just bleeds into the text.
The relief is palpable. He writes, quote, "Holly shit, wig on a stick, it cut the glass."
Wig on a stick.
Right, that exclamation, wig on a stick, it's pure, unadulterated childhood absurdity, masking a profound psychological detonation.
Yeah.
He follows it with, it was a real diamond after all, a big chunky diamond ring. The validation is absolute. He holds undeniable physical proof of immense value.
But if we examine how he metabolizes this validation, the narrative shifts from a story about a lucky discovery into a profound tragedy about socioeconomic desperation.
Right.
Once that glass is prominently scored, the object undergoes a radical psychological metamorphosis.
It's no longer just a toy.
It ceases to be a piece of jewelry entirely. Listen to the specific linguistic choices the child uses to categorize this object in his internal ledger.
He strips it of its decorative identity entirely.
Yes.
He refers to it as a long-term safekeeper. He projects massive structural concepts onto it, calling it a future, a house. And then he uses a phrase that is so poetic and so devastating, it practically stops your heart.
What is it?
He calls the diamond a jump start past the struggle of fire.
Wow. The struggle of we really have to pause and analyze the sheer weight of that metaphor from a developmental perspective.
Exactly.
A child is using the concept of fire to describe their baseline existence. Fire represents an environment that is actively consuming the oxygen in the room. It represents constant pain, instability, and the daily burning anxiety of unpredictable scarcity.
Yeah.
When he calls this ring a jumpstart past that fire, he is revealing that he views his childhood not as a period of growth, but as an active crisis zone he must escape.
He is projecting his entire capacity for salvation onto a piece of compressed carbon.
Exactly.
To him, this isn't a shiny rock that might buy him 100 new video games.
Yes.
This is literal escape velocity.
Yes.
He believes that if he can just hold onto this object long enough, it will magically mutate into the structural stability his parents have failed to provide. He holds a house in the palm of his small, dirt-stained hand.
Exactly. The diamond represents the promise of geographic and economic mobility.
Right.
It is a tangible antidote to his father's addiction and his mother's chaos. And because of the immense psychological load this object now carries, the child realizes he is faced with an unprecedented logistical nightmare.
How to hide it.
Right. He possesses an endgame asset, but he resides in a fundamentally compromised environment.
He is a solitary guardian operating behind enemy lines in his own home.
Yeah.
He can't just slide a future house under his mattress or leave it on his bedside table.
No, that would be found immediately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The threat matrix he established earlier dictates that any conventional hiding spot will be inevitably compromised by his mother's cleaning, his sister's snooping, or his father's desperate searching.
Right.
He requires a vault.
And the vault he chooses reveals the tragic intersection of his adult-level anxiety and his childhood resources.
Yeah.
He requires a location that exists entirely outside the peripheral vision of the adults.
So he turns to the only domain where he possesses absolute territorial sovereignty, his toy box.
Right.
Specifically, he conceals the diamond within a secret internal compartment of his Ninja Turtle toy van.
I really want to explore the psychology of spatial autonomy here.
Okay, let's do it.
Because his choice of the Ninja Turtle van is not merely convenient, it is highly symbolic.
Really? How so?
Well, think about it. In the canon of that specific childhood media, The Ninja Turtles are figures who exist in the subterranean infrastructure of a hostile city.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They live in the sewers, hidden away from the dangerous, unpredictable world above, actively guarding their sanctuary.
That's incredible.
The child is mirroring this narrative.
That is a brilliant connection.
Yeah.
He is internalizing the lore of his toys and applying it to his survival strategy.
Furthermore, in a household where he lacks any legal or physical power, his toys are the only items that the family dynamic officially codes as his.
Right.
The adults dismiss the toys as developmentally appropriate clutter.
They don't look twice at them.
Exactly. They do not perceive a plastic van as a vessel for economic salvation. Therefore, in the child's logical framework, the toy van represents the ultimate psychological blind spot for his predators.
The perfect hiding spot.
By placing the adult-level asset inside the childhood artifact, he is attempting to render the diamond invisible to the adult gaze.
It is the ultimate camouflage. He is using the aesthetics of innocence to cloak a mechanism of profound financial escape.
Yes.
But there is a fatal flaw in his security protocol. By utilizing a toy as a vault, he leaves the asset inherently vulnerable to the ecosystem of play.
Yes.
And this brings us to the catastrophic breach of his sanctuary, the Trojan horse.
The mechanism of the theft is what elevates this from a simple loss of property to a foundational psychological trauma.
Right.
It is vital to examine the specific vectors through which the perimeter was breached.
Okay, so he has the diamond secured in the secret compartment. The perimeter feels solid. And then a friend comes over for a play date.
Normal kid stuff.
Totally normal. But the friend introduces a wild card into the environment.
Mm-hmm.
He brings his older cousin.
Right.
Now, this older cousin does not execute a forced entry. He doesn't shatter a window or break down a door.
Yeah.
He utilizes social engineering that is so coldly manipulative, it weaponizes the very fabric of childhood against the victim.
It's chilling.
It is. The older cousin instructs the two younger boys to, quote, go play outside, while he intentionally lingers behind inside the house.
We really need to look at the linguistics of that command.
Okay.
Go play outside is perhaps the most ubiquitous, innocuous instruction a child receives.
Sure. Parents say it all the time.
Exactly. It is an evolutionary directive for children to expend energy. By issuing this command, the older cousin completely bypasses the child's highly tuned threat detection system.
Because it sounds so normal.
Right. The child has spent all his cognitive energy guarding against his father, his mother, and his sister. He is not calibrated to defend against an invited guest initiating standard play protocols.
He assumes the social contract of the playdate provides a temporary umbrella of security.
Yes.
So he and his friend run outside into the yard, fundamentally abandoning the spatial autonomy of the bedroom.
Leaving it unguarded.
And the older cousin is left entirely alone with the vault. And what follows is not a targeted heist. The cousin has zero knowledge of the diamond's existence.
He's not looking for a future house.
No. He is just executing a crime of indiscriminate predatory opportunity.
And the nature of the cousin's looting is what makes it so devastating.
Yeah.
When a thief targets a specific high-value item, it is a calculated business transaction. But this cousin engages in a systemic strip mining of the environment.
Right.
He is indiscriminately dismantling the child's sanctuary.
Ryan's memoir details the inventory of the loss, and the breadth of it is staggering.
It's awful.
Yes. The cousin finds the secret compartment in the Ninja Turtle van and extracts the diamond ring. But he doesn't stop there.
He keeps going.
He steals Ryan's personal collectibles, the badges. He steals whatever petty cash he can find. He moves into the parents' bedroom and steals items from their space.
Unbelievable.
And in a detail that truly exposes the casual cruelty of the act, he steals the sister's favorite Boys the Second Men cassette tape.
The inclusion of the Boys to Second Men cassette is the crucial data point in understanding the psychological profile of the theft. The cousin is not merely liquidating assets for cash, right? A used cassette tape has almost zero street value.
Sure.
He is stealing items of pure sentimental value. He is stripping the household of the very objects that generate dopamine and comfort for its inhabitants.
That's so dark.
It is a violation of the home's emotional infrastructure.
It transforms the act from simple theft into a profound personal violation.
Absolutely.
And for Ryan, the realization of this loss isn't just the realization that a piece of jewelry is missing. It is the realization that his escape velocity has been neutralized.
The jump start has been aborted.
Exactly. He has been violently shoved back into the struggle of fire, and the exits have been sealed.
Dr. Tennillious' clinical file utilizes a very specific, almost legalistic phrase to describe the child's psychological positioning in the aftermath of this event.
What phrase?
The notes state that Abdul was, quote, convicted to trust those who robbed him.
Convicted to trust.
We need to unpack the density of the word convicted in this context.
It's a fascinating linguistic choice by the doctor. Normally, we associate conviction with a criminal sentence, or perhaps a deeply held religious belief.
Right.
To be convicted to trust sounds like an unavoidable, mandated sentence.
That is precisely the mechanism at play. This was not a random act of chaos perpetrated by a stranger in a ski mask.
No.
This was a violation committed by an invited guest.
Yeah.
The social architecture of childhood dictates that if your peer brings a relative into your home, you are socially obligated, you are convicted, to extend the perimeter of your trust to encompass that relative.
Right, you have to trust them.
The older cousin exploited the mandatory innocence of the playdate to systematically dismantle the child's future.
And think about the agonizing isolation of the aftermath. Ryan cannot run to his parents and scream, "The cousin stole my diamond!"
No, he can't.
Because to articulate the loss of the diamond is to confess to the possession of the diamond. He would be exposing the fact that he hid a massive asset from his family, which would instantly trigger the exact parental wrath and dysfunction he was trying to avoid in the first place.
He is trapped in a hermetically sealed nightmare.
He has to grieve the loss of his literal future in absolute, terrifying silence.
He is experiencing profound traumatic loss, but he is denied the social utility of mourning.
Yeah.
And this isolation leads directly into the next phase of the narrative, which shifts the trauma from an acute interpersonal betrayal into a chronic institutional collapse.
Right.
The theft itself is the inciting injury, but the systemic failure of the surrounding community to validate his reality is what ultimately fractures his mind.
Let's transition into that systemic failure, because reading this section of the memoir elicited a visceral reaction of anger from me.
It's incredibly frustrating.
It really is. We see Ryan attempting to seek justice within the limited parameters available to a child. He knows who committed the crime, but the older cousin simply vanishes from the immediate social circle. So Ryan, desperate to reclaim his stolen future, begins physically tracking the cousin down.
He's investigating.
Right. He is repeatedly ringing the friend's house. He is physically walking over to their property, knocking on the door, and he is continually ignored, stonewalled, or actively sent away. Where are the adults here? How does a teenager walk out with cash, collectibles, a cassette tape, and a diamond, and the family just shrugs?
Oh, he is attempting to engage the adult infrastructure to rectify a grievance.
Exactly. And finally, he manages to corner the friend's auntie, an adult figure of authority within the thief's family structure.
Right.
He reports the theft directly to her. He provides the data, and her response is the absolute epitome of adult apathy.
What does she do?
She casually claims ignorance, states she hasn't seen the older cousin either, and completely washes her hands of the entire situation.
Wow.
She offers zero investigation, zero validation, and zero comfort.
What we are witnessing in this interaction is the textbook definition of sanctuary trauma evolving into institutional betrayal.
Let's push further into those concepts, because they seem to form the bedrock of Dr. Tennillious' final diagnosis. How do these concepts operate on a neurodevelopmental level?
Sure. So sanctuary trauma occurs when the environment a person relies upon for safety. In this case, the localized neighborhood and peer network becomes the source of the trauma itself.
Okay, that makes sense.
But institutional betrayal goes a layer deeper. It occurs when the authority figures or systems designated to protect the vulnerable actively ignore, dismiss, or collude in the harm.
Like the auntie.
Exactly. When Ryan reports the theft to the auntie, his developing brain is running an algorithm. He inputs the truth, expecting the output of justice, or at least adult intervention.
But the auntie breaks the algorithm.
She doesn't just break it, she rewrites his baseline understanding of reality.
How so?
By choosing apathy, the auntie is making a highly calculated, energetic decision. She is weighing the thermodynamic cost of confronting a delinquent teenager in her own family against the ease of dismissing a neighborhood child, and she chooses to protect her own peace.
Wow.
In doing so, she teaches Ryan a devastating neurological lesson
It is.
that persistence and truth have zero correlation with justice. She teaches him that adults will actively protect their own comfort over a child's verified, desperate reality.
She effectively gaslights his trauma out of existence to save herself a headache.
Precisely.
And you would hope that As time passes, the acute sting of this betrayal might begin to fade.
You'd hope.
But months later, the universe orchestrates a moment of sheer sociopathic cruelty that absolutely shreds whatever remaining psychological defenses Ryan has left.
Yeah.
We arrive at the playground extortion.
This is, without question, the most brazen, architecturally destructive moment in the entire narrative.
It is almost difficult to comprehend the audacity. Months have passed. The diamond is gone. Ryan is existing on the school playground, a theoretically supervised, regulated environment.
Right.
And who approaches him? The younger brother of the friend who brought the thief into his house in the first place.
Unbelievable.
And this younger brother casually pulls out 6 distinct badges and presents them to Ryan.
The physical, empirical evidence of the original crime has geographically circled back to the victim.
Yes. Ryan instantly recognizes them. They are his highly specific personal collectibles that were stolen during the raid on the Ninja Turtle van.
Wow.
But the younger brother doesn't just display them. He initiates a transaction.
Oh, no.
He looks at Ryan and asks if Ryan wants to buy his own stolen badges back for 50 cents apiece.
The psychological violence of that offer is immense.
It is breathtakingly cruel. Ryan, understandably, confronts him. He points to the items and states unequivocally, "These are the badges stolen from my house by your brother and cousin."
Right, he states the facts.
He presents the factual history. And the younger brother simply feigns total ignorance. He plays dumb, maintaining the extortionate offer.
Unbelievable.
So Ryan executes the final, desperate protocol available to a child in civil society.
What does he do?
He takes this direct, physical evidence of theft and extortion, and he reports it to the apex authority figure of his public life, the school principal.
He appeals to the highest institutional court available to him.
Exactly. And Ryan summarizes the result of this ultimate appeal in one brief, incredibly dark sentence. He writes, "However, nothing came of it."
God.
The principal, presented with a localized extortion racket involving stolen property, did absolutely nothing.
We must deeply analyze the structural collapse that occurs within the child's mind at this precise moment.
Yeah.
This is not merely a failure of discipline, it is the death of the social contract.
Right.
Let's look at the layers of failure intersecting on this playground. First, the 50-cent extortion demonstrates that the peer group views Ryan not as a human being worthy of empathy, but as an endless resource to be mined.
Yeah, they see him as an easy target.
They assume he is structurally weak enough to pay a ransom for his own memories.
They are essentially mocking his inability to defend his own borders.
Precisely. It is public humiliation layered over unresolved trauma. But the principal's inaction is the fatal blow.
Why the principal specifically?
Because the principal represents the objective, codified rules of society. When the principal does nothing, it confirms every paranoid, hypervigilant hypothesis the child formed when he first dug that diamond out of the mud.
The threat matrix is proven entirely accurate, but expanded to a macro level.
Exactly. He originally hypothesized that his immediate family was unsafe. That proved true. He learned the neighbor's aunt was apathetic. That proved true.
Yeah.
And now the principal proves that the systemic institutional world is fundamentally broken and actively indifferent to his suffering.
It's a total failure across the board.
His silver beauty, his jump start past the fire, is permanently gone. Not just because a teenager executed a crime of opportunity, but because the entire adult world, from the living room to the principal's office, colluded to allow the theft to stand.
The world collectively shrugged at his psychological annihilation.
Yes.
And that systemic, total environment failure is the only way we can properly contextualize the symptoms documented in Dr. Tennillious' clinical file.
Right, we have to bring it all back.
We have to take the weight of the lost future, the betrayal by the cousin, the gaslighting by the aunt, and the ultimate abandonment by the principal, and carry all of that context back into the doctor's office.
We are returning to the phenomenon of the visitation.
Because now we are equipped to understand the child's ultimate haunting coping mechanism.
Let's re-examine the mother's clinical report.
Okay, Nina brings Abdul Ryan to the doctor because she is terrified her child has begun talking to himself.
Right.
And we need to be clear. The file emphasizes that this is not the idle, absent-minded muttering we all engage in when we are searching for our car keys or organizing a grocery list.
No, not at all. The clinical notes describe a highly structured, intense behavior. The vocalizations are complex.
Nina reports that he is having full, protracted conversations. He is actively debating.
Yeah.
He is modulating his tone and speaking as if he were two entirely distinct entities, analyzing and arguing over mundane, everyday activities.
And the crucial diagnostic criteria here.
He exhibits this behavior exclusively in total closed-door isolation.
This is the intersection where the mother's perception of the supernatural collides violently with the reality of profound psychological trauma.
I want to focus on that collision.
Yeah.
Because earlier we established that if a parent hears their child engaged in a heated two-way debate in an empty room, their mind might leap to a haunting.
Right, ghost story.
They might visualize a demon, a ghost, an external entity that has crossed the threshold of the home. Why is the human brain so quick to externalize this behavior into the realm of the paranormal? And how does Dr. Tennillious' file dismantle that assumption?
Well, we jump to the paranormal because it is a deeply protective psychological reflex for the parent.
Protective, how?
Acknowledge the alternative. If there is no ghost in the room, then the child's mind is fundamentally fracturing under the weight of an environment the parent failed to secure.
Oh.
Right. A ghost is an external villain, a malicious anomaly that absolves the parents of guilt.
It's outside of their control.
Exactly. But a splintering mind is a direct indictment of the household's structural integrity.
That makes total sense.
The mother, Nina, wants to believe in a visitation because a visitation can be exorcised. A shattered trust cannot.
That is a staggering observation. The supernatural is essentially a parental defense mechanism against the reality of their own failure.
Yes. But Dr. Tennillious' file forces us to look at the actual mechanism of the child's mind. We have just documented how this child learned, through repeated, empirical, agonizing data collection, that the external world is a zone of total hazard.
Yeah, his father will liquidate his hope. His friends will orchestrate his robbery.
The neighborhood adults will gaslight him. The school authorities will abandon him. As the clinical notes explicitly state, for this child, all trust has been abandoned.
The external world is completely bankrupt.
Yeah.
He can no longer extract any social or emotional capital from it.
Exactly. The borders are permanently closed. However, the human brain, especially a neuroplastic, developing brain, possesses a biological, evolutionary imperative for dialogue, for social interaction, for debate, and for the mirroring of ideas.
Right, we are social creatures.
A mind cannot exist in an absolute vacuum without degrading.
Yeah.
So if the external world is too lethal to engage with, what does the biological system do to ensure its own survival?
It manufactures its own internal supply.
It turns inward and creates an entirely closed-loop ecosystem. There is no external entity in that bedroom. There is no supernatural visitation. What the mother is hearing through the door is the sound of severe, necessary psychological splintering.
He is physically generating a conversational partner out of his own consciousness.
He has manifested a secondary persona, or at the very least, a highly developed vocalized projection to fulfill the biological requirement for interaction.
That is wild.
By externalizing a fragment of his own mind and debating with it, he creates a perfectly controlled social environment.
Because it's completely safe.
Yes. Within this closed internal loop, the variables are absolute. He cannot be betrayed by this second voice.
Right.
He cannot be robbed by it. He cannot be ignored by a principal or dismissed by an aunt. He controls both the thesis and the antithesis of the debate.
That's incredible.
What the mother perceives as a horrifying haunting is, in reality, a miraculous, desperate act of psychological self-preservation.
It is breathtakingly resourceful while simultaneously being the saddest thing I have ever heard.
It's tragic.
His brain recognized that his environment was unlivable, so it built a lifeboat out of his own identity. It brings us back to the Ninja Turtle van. He couldn't trust the house, so he built a vault in the van. But when the van was breached, he realized physical vaults are useless.
Right.
So he built the ultimate unassailable vault inside the neural pathways of his own brain.
That is an exceptional synthesis of the narrative. The internal voice is the final, impenetrable secret compartment.
But the clinical file reveals one last agonizing detail that proves just how deeply entrenched this defense mechanism has become.
What happens?
The mother, Nina, terrified by the voices, eventually forces a confrontation. She breaches the isolation of the bedroom and directly questions Abdul about the conversation she is hearing through the door.
And we must analyze his response to this interrogation.
Dr. Tennillious notes that when confronted, the child flatly, absolutely denies that any conversation took place.
Right.
He doesn't offer an excuse. He doesn't say he was playing a game. He enacts a total blackout of information.
Yeah.
He shuts his mother out completely.
Let's connect the architecture of this denial back to the very first moments in the garden.
Okay.
This denial is a flawless replication of his original threat response protocol.
How so?
When he found the physical diamond, he hid it from his family because he knew empirically that they would destroy its value or take it from him.
Right.
Now, years later, his trauma response has scaled up from protecting a physical object to protecting the architecture of his own consciousness.
If he admits to his mother that the internal companion exists, he exposes the asset.
Precisely. If he validates her observation, he invites the adults back into his sanctuary.
And they'll ruin it.
They will perceive the voices as a threat, which they do, and they will attempt to eradicate them. They will take him to psychiatrists. They might introduce heavy pharmacological interventions. They will try to silence the only reliable, trustworthy entity he has left in the universe.
Wow.
He allowed his physical future house to be stolen because he trusted the rules of a playdate. He will not make the same miscalculation with his own mind.
The denial is not a lie. It is a heavily fortified perimeter wall.
Exactly.
He is standing guard over the ghost he created to keep himself company. I really want you to pause and sit with the sheer density of that isolation.
It's heavy.
Consider the profound, compounding tragedy required to produce this clinical outcome. This child's external support structures failed so comprehensively, so systematically, that his mind was forced to construct a phantom just to survive the silence.
Yeah.
And now he must fiercely, desperately protect that phantom from the very mother who was supposed to protect him in the first place. He is profoundly, absolutely alone, while surrounded by his entire family.
It fundamentally demands that we reevaluate our cultural definition of a haunting.
It absolutely does. Because if we pull back and look at the entirety of the journey we've mapped out today in this deep dive, the distance covered is staggering.
It really is.
We began in a moment of pure, almost cinematic magic. A child digging in the tactile reality of the mud, unearthing a diamond ring, and experiencing the euphoric belief that he had discovered a jump start past the burning anxieties of his family's poverty.
And we forensically tracked how that localized moment of hope was systematically dismantled.
Piece by piece.
We observed the anatomy of an opportunistic betrayal by a guest, the devastating apathy of a neighborhood adult, and the ultimate institutional collapse of the school system, which allowed the physical evidence of his trauma to be leveraged against him for 50 cents.
All of which culminated in a psychological retreat so severe, so absolute, that it forced a developing mind behind closed doors, generating auditory defense mechanisms that terrified a mother into believing her house was possessed.
Yeah.
It is a story that mimics the aesthetic of a paranormal thriller, but the underlying mechanics are grounded in a reality that is vastly more terrifying than any supernatural fiction.
I believe the most vital takeaway from Dr. Tennillious' file is the necessity of examining the glass tests occurring in our own environments.
Right.
While you may never have experienced a trauma as acute as watching an endgame asset be looted from a plastic toy vault, the psychological mechanics of trust and betrayal are universal.
Yeah, we all go through it on some level.
We all possess vulnerabilities, nascent hopes, or fragile realities that require validation, our own personal uncut diamonds.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
We must constantly analyze how we are protecting those assets, and more importantly, who we are trusting to verify them.
And conversely, it demands we look at our role when we are the adults in the room.
Oh, absolutely.
When a vulnerable person approaches us with the raw data of their loss, are we calculating the thermodynamic cost of intervention and choosing the apathy of the ant?
Are we protecting our own peace?
Or are we providing the validation and sanctuary required to keep their mental architecture intact? Are we affirming their reality, or are we passively allowing them to be extorted on the playgrounds of their lives?
The file forces us to confront our own complicity in the environments we help maintain.
It is a devastatingly powerful metric for self-evaluation. And it leads me to one final lingering thought for you to carry away from this deep dive.
Oh, okay.
As a culture, we dedicate massive amounts of energy to fearing external threats. We manufacture horror movies about monsters under the bed, demonic entities in the attic, and malevolent visitations in the dark.
Right, the threat is always outside.
We are obsessed with the idea of a home being infiltrated from the outside. But when you examine the forensic reality of Ryan's memoir, and you witness how thoroughly a human mind can be driven to fracture by the systemic apathy of the people they are convicted to trust,
It changes everything.
it leaves you with a deeply unsettling realization. Perhaps the true terror isn't an external entity breaking in. Isn't the real undeniable haunting the realization that sometimes, when the world utterly abandons you, the only safe entity left to speak with is the ghost of your own stolen innocence?